Right.
Okay. I'm gonna speak up.
Yep.
Okay, so me and Olivia will be presenting the English monarchy and political system of the 1500s and 1600s.
So first off, we're going to talk about the type of government. So people in England described it as a mixed government, meaning that the monarchs and the parliament worked together as a team.
Yeah. So the Parliament of England was actually on its own, just one parliament at the beginning of the 14th century till the 17th century, and then from then on, it partnered with Scotland's parliament, and they became one big parliament called Great Britain.
Great Britain. Yep. Perfect. So how was the government organized? Well, basically the government was organized. Well, it was divided in two parts, and I think Robyn can explain us what the two parts really um, did in the government.
Yes. Okay. So it first started off with the private council. Now, this was the main council, but they couldn't rule all of England and take care of
Mm-hmm.
all the things that were going on.
Yep.
So they partnered with the Council of the Marches and North, and they both took care of their separate parts of England. And
Yeah.
now that created one big organized
Yeah.
government.
They were pretty well organized.
Mhm.
All right. So, who ruled England in the 1500s and the 1600s? So, basically, we're going to talk about the royal family. In those time, it was the Tudor family. So, there was six king or queen. And I think, Robyn, do you want to explain our first king who was Henry the Seventh?
Yes. Okay. So Henry VII became king at the age of 28 after he defeated Richard III at the Battle of Bosworth Field.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah.
And yeah, that's pretty much it for.
Good for him. Go for him.
Then we had Henry the Eighth, and he was from 1509 to 1547, and he was 17 years old when he was crowned. He actually had six wives, which is kind of crazy,
And
but
he
yeah,
had
he
favorites too.
yeah, exactly. And he was actually very athletic. But there was one day he had a tournament of sport, and he injured himself. And the time went by, and he never really took a chance to heal, and that caused him to a bad physical and mental. Like he wasn't healthy.
Like, he wasn't healthy, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Physically and mentally. Okay, now we're gonna talk about Edward V. So poor dude was crowned
Yeah,
at the age of 9. His whole
yeah.
childhood thrown into the garbage.
Oh yeah.
Um, so his so his mom was actually Jane Seymour, which was Henry VIII's favorite wife. So that's
Hmm.
pretty cool. But the thing about this poor guy was that he also died at the age of 15, which don't get me wrong
Hmm.
is very sad, but it might have been a good thing because
For England.
because since he was so young, it caused so many issues, like
Economy.
economy and like socially and stuff.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Next we have Jane Grey, which her nickname was 9 Days Queen, and I think Robyn, will you care to explain the major
I
plot that happened in her life?
I would love to. So she was cousins with Mary the First, and we'll talk about her after. So Mary decided that she really wanted to be queen, so she decided to take her cousin Jane up to the London Tower and lock her in there. And we
Yeah.
also have a little bit of a different story, and I think Olivia would love to just tell us about
Oh
that.
yes, I would love to. So basically, she formed an army after that to decapitate Jane Grey, and just because Mary knew that she was the next in line to be queen, so she did all of that just to be queen. She killed her cousin. So yeah,
Okay, next is Mary, and there's not much to be said about her because we all know that she already destroyed her cousin. But
yeah.
her nickname was Bloody Mary, and well, I think we all know why. She was also Catholic though, and a lot of people really emphasize on that in that time
Yeah.
because they want a Catholic leader. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, some people battled for it too.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Okay, so now we have Elizabeth I, which in my opinion was the best out of
She's
all of
the
them.
best.
Um, her nickname was actually Virgin Queen. She did not have any children or any husband. She loved theater, which is probably why William Shakespeare was very popular in that time. And don't get me wrong, is still very popular. She brought also a good stability to England, which is why there was the golden age in that time.
Yeah. Okay, so next we're going to talk about the growing economy at that time.
Yeah.
So, in the beginning of the 1500s, the economy was doing really well.
Mm-hmm.
They had low rents and high wages and stuff, and they were doing really well. But then at the end of that time, it sort of shifted, and
Yeah.
the plague happened, and the economy depression happened,
Yeah.
and it just completely changed from what they were doing so well, and now they're
But
doing bad.
yeah, but then it bumped back up in the
Mhm.
1600s, and they started doing trade industry, and major industries like lumber and trading and slave labor. All those things really helped to improve their life standard, and yeah, so they became a better place
Yeah,
because
and
of
that's also when Queen Elizabeth was in reign too,
yeah,
so
exactly.
probably has something to do with that. Okay, next the monarchy family tree. So we're gonna start off with Henry the Seventh. So he's up there. Olivia will point him out for you. And he was Henry the Eighth's dad. They're so original with their names.
Yeah,
Um, so then you can see all of Henry's 6 wives there. So
yeah,
basically, he had Edward with Jane Seymour, and then him and Catherine d'Aragon had Mary the First, and then him and Anne Boleyn, very interesting last name, had
yeah,
Queen Elizabeth the First. So that's
yeah,
basically the
exactly.
whole Tudor family right there for you.
Yeah. Now let's talk about
Okay.
the money function and taxes. So basically, the money function I think is very interesting in
Yeah,
that time.
I
If you
thought it was
compare
gonna be
it to
boring, but it's really cool.
yeah, it's actually really cool. So
Mhm.
basically, in the 1500s, there was the currency was basically the main pound sterling, which is equivalent to $1.70 for a Canadian, and is actually equal to 200 silver pennies and equivalent to 1 pound weight.
Mhm. Okay, and so in the 1600s, the pound sterling was still very popular, but it
Mhm.
switched over more to shillings and pence. And if you remember from the book, Olivia, I
Yeah,
think
yeah.
Peter
Peter.
used shillings.
Yeah, Peter and
Mhm.
everyone actually in the book, Q for
Used
Treason,
shillings. Mhm.
handled shillings with them.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah, but it's kind of sad though because shillings are only 0.011 cents,
Hmm.
which is it's not even
In
possible in
Canadian.
Canadian dollars. And
Hmm.
then 100 pence is worth
A pound sterling.
$1.70 in Canadian money.
Yeah.
Mhm. Now we'll talk about the taxes,
Yeah.
Olivia.
So yeah, sure. So the main tax was called the geld, and basically it's 2 shillings per hide, and a hide is 60 to 120 acres.
Mhm.
So the owner of that hide needs to pay 2 shillings. But in a year, it's about 20 shillings based on the land that you own.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the common problems of that time and how they affected the government.
Yeah.
So we'll
We'll start
start
off.
yeah, we'll start talking about the plague.
Yeah.
So just to give you like a little bit of a point, I guess I don't know how to explain that. England started off with had 3 million people at that time,
Yeah.
and throughout like the next couple of years, it didn't go up because of the
Because
virus.
there was so much plagues and sickness. Yeah.
Now, like the plague is kind of like COVID, but like, could you
Yeah.
imagine wearing those masks?
Yeah. Those were the masks that they were during the plague and stuff. So like
Mhm.
we wear like, you know, like those blue masks and stuff, but they wore those masks. Like just
Yeah.
imagine wearing that like all day. It's
We'd
not
all
really
look
fun.
like birds.
But yeah, basically. But yeah, so because of that, the government had to put the wages higher and the rent lower because there was such a shortage of laborers caused by the plague and sickness. Okay.
Yes.
So now
Okay,
the
so
gunpowder plot. Yeah, Robyn, you want to go?
sure, I'll go. Okay, so the gunpowder plot, it was a plot basically. They wanted to get rid of King James because he wasn't Catholic, and like we mentioned earlier, everybody wanted a Catholic ruler, and that was very
Yeah.
important to them. And they did end up
Hmm.
killing him, which
Yeah.
is kind of sad. But yeah, moving
And
on.
lastly, we're going to sum this up with the big question of who was really in power. So between the government, so the political system, and the monarchy, Robyn, like who is really in power? Is it the monarchs
Okay.
or the government?
Okay, so at the beginning of the 1500s,
Yeah.
the monarchs really rose to power. And I think that it's hard to explain, but they were the ones who were really viewed as in power. And I think they were the ones who were most respected by the
Yeah.
people of England. But we can't forget
But
the government.
the government did the political decisions.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
also a
They
big
handled the
part.
crime too.
Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly.
So we
So
can't forget
yeah,
them.
so that sums it up for our
Mhm.
presentation, and thanks for listening.
Thank you guys so much.
Everyone in this room here, I can't hear you in your individual rooms, and I can't hear you here. And maybe because I'm on 3 different recordings right now. I will leave this place. I think you should still remain here. If I leave and you have to leave because I leave, come back whenever you see me come back as well, okay?
Should I raise my hand too?
It's not it.